We're back for our third episode of Offseason content here with Major League Baseball on the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network. I'm Toby Schulman here for Back to the Dugout, as always, on this Thursday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a great start to their day, and hope we can take you into the weekend with at least some fun MLB rumors that are spreading around with things like free agency and not a lot of trades that have been, talked about or proposed in like in a mock way or something that I've seen. So just a lot of free agency news, and as you guys can see, we have a little bit new of a background here for the show, and you can kind of see the stuff that we're going to be talking about just below my camera here. So obviously we have to talk about Blake Snell's potential landing spots. As you can see, I have an article pulled up by Mark Feinsand, which is 7 top suitors for Snell, what his contract might look like. We're going to take just a look at those 7 possible suitors and what that could possibly mean for the rest of the league. If Snell is able to go to one of those teams, and the team that actually I have him going to is not even listed on here. So we'll talk about a little bit about that towards the end of, I'm guessing, the first half. That probably will take a bulk of our show here, but we're going to talk about that. And then obviously it seems like every single episode we're going to have something Juan Soto to talk about until he signs. He obviously won't sign for a very long time, but we're starting to have these rumors fly around, and Soto to Philly has been an interesting one that I've been seeing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, what that could look like for the rest of the league. Some notable position shifts with a couple big names in the league that I think are interesting to talk about because they mean a little bit more for the teams than just moving them around to fill a hole necessarily. So then there's some other news to talk about, some other I wouldn't say big deal signings, but definitely signings that I want to at least talk about a little bit if we got time at the end of the show. So let's just get right into Blake Snell. Let's get talking about his possible suitors, the 7 teams that would be willing to drop a lot of money on Blake Snell. And the first one we're going to get into here is the San Francisco Giants, who I believe are the very first one here on the potential suitors list. So yeah, obviously we're not just going to read this article. You guys could go take a look at this article if you want to on your own. But we're going to look at the Giants here first, because looking at their depth chart, at least in the pitching rotation, it does not look amazing for next year when you look at the NL West and the division that they're in with the other rotations, and given that the Padres and the Dodgers are going to do something to somehow improve, this rotation's kind of an odd one out in terms of one that would be able to make the postseason, in my opinion. And obviously, you've got a great arm in Logan Webb there to be your ace. But I mean, other than that, there's really not much to talk about with this rotation. It's pretty mid. It's not the best rotation you want. If you're a Central Division team, this rotation might be good enough to sneak you into the wild card if everybody puts their best foot forward. But this just seems like a signing that the Giants should make. Snell already played for them. He did really well for them, and with a new head of baseball operations in Buster Posey, this would be an incredible signing for him to kind of start his career in that spot with the Giants. But again, that rotation is just kind of lacking, and that's where Blake Snell can really come in and make an impact. While Logan Webb can definitely be a 1 in his own regard, he didn't necessarily put numbers on the board last year that made me think that he deserves to really be a 1 going into this year. Like, yes, he was a National League All-Star, but he didn't post the best numbers. He had a 3.47 ERA in 33 games started. He did lead the NL in innings pitched with 204.2. So I mean, that's a really big bonus if you're looking at just a pitcher who will stay healthy and will give you good innings on the mound. There's not many people better at doing that than Logan Webb himself. So he's going to give you a great season. I mean, there's really no debating that. But looking at the rest of the rotation, it's kind of a big question mark. You got a couple guys who sometimes struggle to stay healthy in Robbie Ray and Jordan Hicks. Robbie Ray made 7 starts in 2024, and at times looked pretty good, but at other times he didn't, and that's why he had a 4.7 ERA. Not great, and that's not at all what you want your number 2 on the mound and on the rotation to really have. Jordan Hicks, I think, can actually take a step forward this season a lot. In 20 starts, he had a 4.10 ERA and 109.2 innings pitched. He didn't only make starts, which, he is a very versatile arm, has a lot of really solid velocity as well. So he does have that part in him that, makes him, I guess, a guy that they like coming out of the bullpen sometime with that high velo. Then we've got Kyle Harrison, who, I mean, he should take a step forward, I would imagine, for sure, in 2025. In 24 games started, he had 4.56 ERA and 85 ERA plus. So he was slightly below the league average metric of 100 there. And this was kind of his second year in the MLB and his first kind of full season. So I expect him to be better next year. But as far as, being in the rotation goes, I think the 4 spot's just where he kind of needs to be, maybe that 5 spot. I really like those first 4 arms, in all honesty. I just don't think, compared to the rest of the division, that they're really a rotation that's going to go out there and be very successful compared to everybody else. And then you got Landon Roop, who only has 4 games started and 23 appearances with a 3.58 ERA. So maybe the Giants are hoping they can kind of transition him into a starter here this next and up and coming season as kind of a backup plan if they can't go out there and sign a pitcher. But I mean, looking at the rotation, it's hard to believe that they're not going to go out there and make a splash for a pitcher. I mean, Blake Snell just checks off all the boxes, performs great in Oracle. With San Francisco in 2024, he had a 2.85 ERA in more innings pitched at home than he did actually pitch on the road. So he had more of a sample size at home this season, and he did much better at Oracle. So I think that they're going to use that as kind of a selling point. You already pitched very well here. You're familiar with the NL West. You would obviously make our rotation a lot better. So, I mean, I don't really think the Giants have much to say other than that to try and get Snell to come back. I think they're in as much control as they possibly could be with this signing. And I think in terms of all the teams on here, this is probably the most likely one, I would think, after, looking at everything this closely. He held opponents to a slash line in 2024 of 192, 269, and 293. So he was absurdly good when at home for San Francisco, and I assume that's something they're going to want to have a reunion with. I think that's a big thing on their offseason checklist is to try and bring back Blake Snell, and we'll just see if they are able to do it. Now, another team we got to talk about is the New York Yankees, who I wouldn't expect them to sign Blake Snell, but I mean, you never really know. They're kind of always in the running for a guy like Blake Snell, and I feel like since he's been on the Rays, this has been a guy that they've been trying to at least make a case for every time he's been available. Obviously, that didn't work out last year, but this season, I mean, who knows? There's still that hole in the or not in the bullpen, but in the starting rotation there, as you can kind of see. This is given Nestor Cortez doesn't join the rotation, but Marcus Stroman still sits there at that 4th. And we talked a little bit about that in the free agent predictions episode because I didn't really think that the Yankees are really going to want to go with Marcus Stroman through the whole season next year. I mean, that's a huge hole in the rotation. I mean, he's not an awful starter, but I mean, in terms of like, if you're going out and you're signing a pitcher, I mean, you need to somehow address this issue. If you're going to sign a pitcher, there's no real reason that Marcus Stroman should be in the rotation. But looking at everybody else, you can assume that these first 2 are untouchable there, and Rodon and Garrett Cole. Obviously, they're big under contract pitchers. They just brought Garrett Cole back, and then obviously Clark Schmidt should take another step forward next year. It just seems like he's slowly improving every single year, and I hope, at least by the time he hits age 30, that he hits a prime and hits a track with the Yankees where he can just get going into some consistent baseball, stay on the field and stay healthy. That's, I think that would have been the biggest thing for Clark to be successful this season, and it kind of derailed him. And then Marcus Stroman, who obviously we want to kind of deal with here, and then Luis Gil at the back end of the rotation, who I think should absolutely stay there and should absolutely keep working to develop into what is already a phenomenal pitcher. But you could see there's obviously a need for maybe another. I don't think there's a need for another lefty there, especially when you take into account that you do have Nestor Cortez here in the bullpen and can technically move him back into the rotation. I'd imagine that's not something they're totally ruling out. They don't really need another lefty, but if you're looking for a pitcher on the market and you're not going for a guy like Corbin Burns, Blake Snell is probably the next guy you're going, to go for, unless you're trying to save some money and you're going with like Walker Buehler, Max Fried, one of those guys. But I feel like they're going with Blake Snell before they even try to go with Corbin Burns. So that's just kind of why I feel like the Yankees are one of the top suitors here, that they're always kind of in it. And while they aren't probably going to pull the trigger on Blake Snell, I mean, they are clearly interested. They've seen a lot of him when it comes to being in the AL East. They've seen a lot of him, but this is all kind of dependent on whether or not they sign Juan Soto. If they sign Juan Soto, that obviously will take away a lot of money. And, I don't know if it's necessarily possible for them to sign both Juan Soto and Blake Snell at the same time, but if they did, that would be very surprising to me. I think if Juan Soto gets signed by any big team, that kind of eliminates Blake Snell to go there, which is why when we get to talking about some of these other teams later on in this segment, you'll come to realize why I think they're a little bit more likely than you'd probably think just reading their name straight up in this list among a list of teams like the New York Yankees and some of the other ones that you'll see in the big markets. But again, this is kind of just dependent on Juan Soto, who, I just don't think he's going to sign till like very, very late in the offseason, but we'll see. I mean, this could be another example of Blake Snell signing late, and I don't know if he really wants to do that again. Again, we'll just kind of have to see about all that. It's all going to be dependent on when Soto signs. And historically, he hasn't pitched very well at Yankee Stadium in 12 appearances, recording a 5.77 ERA with 50 strikeouts. That was good for a 2-5 record there in the Bronx. So he does not have the best history there. Don't think that's a big factor in whether or not he'll sign with the team. But I mean, his last deal wasn't a long-term one. I don't think he's really going to want to wait for the bell essentially to sign his next contract. I think he's going to want to figure that out sooner rather than later. And I think that Blake Snell ultimately will not be signing with the New York Yankees. But there's another team in New York that he could possibly sign with, and this is just a team that is going to be kind of in every single potential landing spot conversation for every single player in free agency, it seems like. But looking at their rotation, I mean, you could tell they kind of need it. Like, Senga should take a step forward, obviously, if he is healthy. David Peterson is a really solid arm, and at age 29, I mean, that's a plus for sure. I don't think a lot of people realize how young David Peterson really is. Paul Blackburn at 30, almost 31 years old. I mean, he's been an all-star. He could put something together, but I don't think that's really the arm you want in the middle of your rotation. Tyler McGill and Jose Butto are definitely solid arms at times, but I don't know if that's two people you want just taking starts every fourth and fifth game. I think they need another arm, and I think they are going to sign multiple, but I don't know if they're going to make a splash as big for Blake Snell, obviously, because they are going after Juan Soto. This is just kind of a circle we have with every single team that is going after Juan Soto is do you go and sign another big name if you were really all in on him? If you're all in on him, do you want to take that money away and give it to a guy like Blake Snell, or do you want to give it to a guy like Juan Soto? I mean, that's going to be the way people really ultimately take this offseason, and we might not see a lot of these guys sign until Soto ultimately decides. But they really they need to make a splash in whatever way they can do it. So if they don't sign Soto, I could definitely see them signing a guy like Corbin Burns, like I mentioned in the free agent prediction video, or who else? Like Max Fried, Walker Buehler. I mean, they can make a huge splash and just sign a bunch of pitchers if they don't get Soto. But we'll just have to see what the Mets do. I'm sure they'll be in on all these guys. Like, I'm sure they'll be in on even guys like Sevy or Minaya. I'm not sure about Jose Quintana, but I imagine that they'll be in on those four guys I mentioned before: Burns, Fried, Sevy, or Burns, Fried, Buehler, and Snell. I think they'll be in on all of those guys, plus a couple other arms and even some more bullpen pieces. But I find this to be one of the more unlikely spots. I'd see him signing with a West Coast team over a team like the Mets or the Yankees. I just feel like at this point Snell kind of wants to stay more out west, but there's also some teams in the AL East that I think could make a case for him. Do you think Soto will fetch north of $600 million? Yeah, probably. I think he could fetch north of $700 million, depending on how late these teams really hold out and depending on how desperate teams get. I think when Steve Cohen said he won't be outbid, I think that tells us he's really willing to go all out and spend 700 plus to get this guy for 14 years. That's what I would do. I would make this very easy for him. I would give him an offer you really can't refuse here. And whilst north of 600 million may seem way too much for a player who's like 26 years old, I mean, this guy is seriously unlike anything that we will probably see ever again. So to say that guy won't get anything near Ohtani's contract, I mean, that would be a little bit. I think that'd be wrong to say. I think he could easily get north of 700 million if a team is willing to go that crazy for him. I think that team would be the Mets that do it. I don't think the Yankees go anywhere near that, but we'll see if Steve Cohen really will really not be matched for his bid, or if he will or if he'll try to stay a little bit more conservative. He is talking about signing him and Pete Alonso at the same time, so I don't even know how much money this guy's willing to shell out, but north of 600 million, I think, is almost a guarantee. I think I saw the Yankees were ready to offer 575 or something, and everybody kind of collectively thought that was a laughable offer, which I kind of agree with too. I think north of 600 million is plenty fair for Juan Soto, and I think he'll push the boundaries of 700 million if he can, or at least Boris is going to. I don't really know how much Juan Soto gets in the talks about that, but we got to talk about the fourth landing spot for Blake Snell, which is one that I also think is pretty unlikely, but that's the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's pretty obvious why they're just in the conversation. They have the money to do it. They've given out big contracts to pitchers already in the recent, last couple of years. But with the money they're giving out to guys like Glasnow, Yamamoto, Ohtani, and with the possibility of them signing back, Burbank native Jack Flaherty, I don't really think that they go after a guy like Blake Snell. I think that if they were to go after Blake Snell, they would have done it maybe last offseason when they probably could have done it for a lot cheaper towards, the tail end of that offseason. But their rotation's pretty full given that they're actually healthy, and I think that they're a lot better off making moves for arms that cost cheaper. I think there are really good arms that cost a lot cheaper than Blake Snell. I think they should go after a guy like Sean Manaea, and at the end of the day, let's just pull up the projected rotation for next year, because I know I've pulled it up before, but like 3 of the 5 guys that didn't pitch last season, a lot of them have all-star experience. So, I mean, they're like, at the end of the day, I mean, do you really have to go after Blake Snell? No. I mean, there's 4 very competent starting pitchers here from 1 through 4 here. I would much rather go with that and try to improve your bullpen a little bit more, even though that doesn't even really need it. Maybe just improve your bench depth a little bit more. There's not much the Dodgers really have to do to improve, obviously, when you go out and win the World Series, but I don't think signing Blake Snell is really a priority for them, especially when they have all these other contracts. I think it's just kind of that big name that you expect to be in the running for it already. And the only real thing you could tell me is that they could use a lefty, which is fair. All these guys are righties, but at the same time, I feel like the Dodgers would be much better signing a guy like Sean Manaea or Max Fried over a guy like Blake Snell. I mean, that just seems to make a ton more sense over signing a very expensive pitcher when you already have a lot of very expensive pitchers on your team. I don't think, I mean, obviously if the Dodgers want to do it, they'll go do it, but I don't think it's necessary at all. And I think they know that too, and they're not going to do it. But I would be very surprised out of all the teams out west if Blake Snell decided to sign with the LA Dodgers. That would be very surprising. But moving on to the 5th potential landing spot for Blake Snell, we've got a couple AL East teams from 5 to 6. And I think it's pretty interesting because this is where I think he's ultimately would be the most interesting landing spot. I mean, I was going to say this is where I think he'll go, but I don't think he'll go here. I think he'll actually just end up going to San Francisco or San Diego. Sorry. But this one's really interesting as well. And I think this would be the most interesting landing spot if he went here. And I think the Boston Red Sox are really in play for Blake Snell for a lot of reasons. The Red Sox are in need of a big signing. This is kind of just something that the ownership's been under pressure to do. And, they're building a really solid team. And in terms of, making a big signing, do you go out and make that signing in the field? I don't really think you do when it comes to just the way we look at this lineup. I mean, I know it doesn't jump out on paper, but there is a lot to like about this lineup. Jarren Duran obviously had an incredible year. This is a potential 50-50 guy if he gets really, really hot. He just has all the tools to do it. Rafael Devers obviously doesn't need really anything said about him. Tristan Casas at 24 years old has been looking really, really good. Should take a huge step forward. And I would expect him to make a push to the All-Star game in 2025. Hopefully Trevor Story could stay healthy and provide a little bit of offensive production that, we were used to seeing with him before. Yoshida, while he doesn't offer much power as a DH, he does get on base and he does hit the gaps really well, hits the ball down the line very well. Wilyer Abreu was right there for the Rookie of the Year voting for the AL, while Luis Gil, who else? Colton Cowser and Austin Wells, almost drew a blank on those for a second. But Abreu was right there, and I think Abreu is going to also take a really big step forward next season, and I think that's a guy who needs to play right field. So do you want to go in and sign a guy like Anthony Santander? Probably not. You probably want to let Abreu develop a little bit more. and then Connor Wong behind the plate. Uh, he had a good season too. I can't remember if he was an all-star or not last season, but he had a good year. I remember he at least was productive. And then, David Hamilton's obviously a bit of a hole there at second base, but then Cedon Rafaela could actually, I'm sure, fill in shortstop, and you could move Story to second and do it, whatever you probably want to do if you're Cora and the Boston Red Sox. But their rotation is where you could really just poke a hole at and say, yeah, they could use a big signing here. Tanner Hawk's great. He had a breakout season last year, but I mean, you can make the case that he's ready to be a one. I personally would make the case that it would be better to make a big signing and have him sit as a number two behind a number one and truly learn what it takes to be a full major league number one ace starting pitcher. I think, just you see he's only got just over 2 years of service time there. He's still learning. A lot of these guys are really still learning, as you can see. So are Brian Bale and Cutter Crawford, two arms that I also really like. But Richard Fitz and Cooper Criswell here, not guys that I really would love to go with long term. Fitz has a little bit more leeway because of his age, but I would definitely want Blake Snell just as a lefty to kind of round out this rotation a little bit better. Again, the field I feel like just has a lot of pieces that are not exactly figured out yet. And then you do have a lot of prospects coming in this season too, which we'll take a look at in a second as well. But I mean, the rotation is just a bit weaker than anything else. And I think that if you add Blake Snell as a big market team that Boston should be acting like, that rotation looks really good, and it makes the AL East very, very interesting. I feel like that would just satisfy the fans' need to spend big. But let's take a look at their prospects, because this is where it starts to get really interesting, because you can make the case that they should make a big signing, but then you get to their prospects and you look at these top five even. I mean, while Braden Montgomery's not going to be ready this season, I mean, all four of these guys probably will be. I think Campbell is definitely going to be ready by 2025 if he's already at the AAA level. Roman Anthony is incredibly solid at 20 years old. He's one of the most well-rounded prospects we have at an overall 60 grade. That's well above average compared to the rest of the prospects in the league. 6'2", 20 years old, 200 pounds. This guy has a great frame. He can play pretty much anywhere in the outfield. I expect him to hit the corner outfield very heavily when he gets here. And I mean, him, Jarren Duran, Wilyer Abreu, I mean, that is hopefully going to be a really good outfield there for a long time. And you got Christian Campbell there to work around either the infield when Trevor Story leaves, or you could throw him and plug him and play him in the outfield as well, because you got Marcelo Mayer here, who is going to break the big league club this year at 21 years old. The 6'3", 188-pound shortstop looks really poised to just maybe make the opening day roster. So there's a lot to like about these prospects. And, we'll touch on Kyle Teal real quick, because I think he'll fill in for Connor Wong very, very well. This guy's one of the most matured prospects that we have, I think, in the entire league, not just in the Boston system, but at 22 years old. I mean, he really looks good. Just taking a look at his stats, you could see what he's done in his short, professional career so far. It's been very productive, and he's been very helpful for the Red Sox system. This is kind of a lot of guys that fall into the Red Sox laps, but they do a great job developing them. And when you look at the top 100, I mean, there's no doubt in that. Roman Anthony, number 3 overall in the top 100. You move down, Christian Campbell, he's 10. Marcelo Mayer, 7. So there's 3 top 10 prospects in the top 100 for the Boston Red Sox, and then you can have 4 in the top 25 with Kyle Teal coming in here at 25, and then not too long after him, I'd imagine Braden Montgomery is going to be down here at 54. So the top 100 is filled with these Red Sox prospects that are just looking to break the big league club. We'll move back to the Red Sox rotation here. But yeah, Blake Snell, I think just with all those prospects coming in to kind of set this new generation of Boston Red Sox baseball, I think signing Blake Snell to a long-term deal to pair with that would be a really good idea. I think at all else, if all that doesn't work, you could ship these guys off and try and get something in return. But I mean, when you have 4 prospects in the top 25, in the top 100, I mean, it's really worth just taking a risk on those guys, because they have so many really good prospects there in the farm. And I'm really excited for them to actually come up and start producing at the major league level. But Blake Snell to the Red Sox would be one that I think would be really cool, and I'm going to try my very hardest to get a written piece about that out sometime within the next couple of days, because that's a really interesting topic, and I really like diving deeper and more in depth about it. But obviously, we don't have all the time on the show to do that. But moving down to the sixth potential landing spot, and we've got to talk about another American League East team, another team that is looking to really just to do better than they did last season after a disappointing end in the wild card. This Orioles team needs another arm. Like they do. We talked about it last episode on the free agent predictions. They need an arm. Trevor Rogers, he's not going to get it done. He just isn't. This is a guy who is not. He's just not good. Like honestly, just not good. I'm not even going to pull his stats up or anything. This guy's just really just not good at all. Albert Suarez, okay. Dean Kremer, the same thing, okay. Grayson Rodriguez, Zach Eflin, I think are very solid arms that we're gonna need to have in the rotation. But other than that, I mean, where's really the dominant starter? They don't have one. I mean, Kyle Bradish, his health is always unknown. I feel like it's just not really a rotation that I feel like is set in place to win right now. And they need a big splash here, and I think they're hoping that's going to be Corbin Burns. I mean, for the Orioles' sake, I can only hope so, because Corbin Burns was absolutely electric for them. They could also always make a splash for like the other three names that I've been throwing out here in this whole segment, but I think Blake Snell would be a very interesting option for the Orioles here. Juan Soto likely doesn't sign here, and I mean, this is obviously a very good pivot if both of them and Corbin Burns don't sign. They're in need of an ace, and he can just provide that. This is for sure a dark horse candidate for the all these landing spots, but I think that Blake Snell to the Baltimore Orioles definitely don't rule that out. The last one here that I kind of just don't really think too much about, because I feel like they're kind of just an afterthought in the league in general, but that's the Toronto Blue Jays. The window on this roster is kind of closing, with guys like Vlad Jr. hitting free agency soon, and Bo Bichette's just not really panning out, not really able to stay healthy. Snell could be a great addition to try and just maybe kickstart something new. I just don't really see a direction for the Blue Jays right now. I don't know where the team's going, and I don't know if you necessarily just dish out a big contract to a pitcher when you don't really have a set roster that could win you games. Maybe they could reconstruct some things this offseason and make me think that the roster is a little bit better. But I mean, let's just take a quick look at it, because it's really not good. Like, I remember looking at it last episode and thinking like, this is not a good lineup at all. Like, oh my God, Will Wagner, Nathan Lukes. Hopefully Spencer Horwitz takes a step forward, and Dalton Varsho proves to be a little bit better. It's not like awful, but this isn't a good lineup at all. And I just don't think adding Snell here that's like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. I feel like it's not really solving anything, but it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see, where Snell goes in free agency. These are all very interesting options. I don't really know. I guessed the Padres for myself, because I thought that a San Diego reunion would be pretty fun. If you want to go see why I said that, go check out the last episode towards the end of the show. I talk about Blake Snell, where I think he'll go. But I think either the Giants or the Padres, or probably Boston, would be my three picks. That's just, to me, the more likely landing spots here. Boston could really use an arm like him, and he obviously has a liking for out west. So we'll see what Blake Snell decides to do. But I think we're going to take a quick break here on the show before we get into a bit of the Juan Soto sweepstakes and a bit of the rumors surrounding that. We're going to talk about a couple position shifts with a couple National League teams, and then we're going to talk about a couple other signings before we end the show here on Thursday afternoon. So, going to take a quick break here on Back to the Dugout. As always, you are watching on the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network. We got a lot of content coming your way this afternoon, so after my show, please don't leave us, as we've got a ton of content coming your way tonight. But I'm going to take a quick break here, and I will be back in a couple of minutes. back for the bottom half of the hour here on Back to the Dugout. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Toby Schulman, as always, on this Thursday afternoon. We got the Phillies up here because we got to talk about a little bit of Juan Soto sweepstakes. This rumor has been flying around. I saw it on MLB.com earlier this week, and it's not like a legit rumor. There's no, I guess, telling signs that he's going to go to Philly over anywhere else, but it got me interested into thinking what the Phillies would look like if Juan Soto was on the team. Now, I think it's pretty easy to think about just what the team would look like, but I wanted to outline it for us here just on the show. As you can see for your own eyes, you see the lineup here is projected as the opening day starting lineup. So let's take a look at what this roster could look like if Juan Soto was actually to be signed by the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, this would obviously be a reunion with Bryce Harper from Washington, and I think that's really cool to think about. I don't think that's a big enough factor for him to really sign with Philly over anywhere else, but that's just another cool storyline and narrative to follow. But first off, we got to think about where Soto's going to hit. Now, he obviously hit second for the New York Yankees. I forget, where he hit for San Diego when he was hitting for them. But this is a guy who needs to be in the top of the order, right? This is one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball, if not the best hitter in Major League Baseball. So we need to find out a spot where this guy could really hit and succeed, at the best. But I think where he would be best at is in the 3-hole here. Obviously, I just don't think you can move Schwarber out of leadoff. And then Trey Turner, I think with that speed and a right-handed hitter to follow that lefty that is Kyle Schwarber, I think that's just necessary there. And then if you plug Soto there and move Trey Turner around, you just get like 3 left-handed bats in a row. And I think if a team wanted to go out and use a lefty opener against Philly, that would be pretty easy to kind of counter. So we're moving Soto in at the 3-hole here, and we're bumping Bryce Harper down to 4. So the starting lineup is going to be looking as follows pretty much. We're moving Bryce Harper down to the 4th spot. It's not really a too much of a negative thing for him. I mean, he'll still get shots at having plenty of RBIs. And I think, when Harper starts to get up there in age, if you are signing Juan Soto, let's take a look at who really deserves that spot more. But it would be Kyle Schwarber to lead off and being the DH there. Trey Turner being shortstop at 2, Juan Soto at right field at 3, Bryce Harper at 4, playing first base, Nick Castellanos in left field at 5, at 6, Alec Bohm playing third base, 7, Bryson Stott playing second base, at 8, JT Realmuto behind the plate, and then at 9, Brandon Marsh in center field, which I would like to see Brandon Marsh get in center field more, and then hopefully Austin Hayes can hit the bench, because looking at the Philly bench, it's not bad, but I would probably rather see Austin Hayes on this team than Weston Wilson, probably. As much as that sucks, as I know a lot of Philly fans, have Weston Wilson pretty close to their hearts. I think Johan Rojas's defense is way too good to keep him off this roster. Not to mention the fact that he's 24 years old. Garrett Stubbs, you need a backup catcher. So it's really just Weston Wilson would be the odd man out here. He'd probably get bumped down to AAA unless they want to do something with Austin Hayes. But that would be an absolutely relentless starting lineup. That's the word that we kind of heard a lot from the broadcast in the World Series and the NLCS, the NLDS, was just how relentless the Dodgers lineup was. You can't tell me that, having to work through this lineup is not tougher than the Dodgers this season. This just has zero gaps between 1 through 9 here in this starting lineup. 23 all-star appearances between these 9 guys, which is pretty unreal to think about. Obviously, Bryce Harper having 8 of those. But you look at Juan Soto with his 4, Schwarber with his 2, Trey Turner with his 3, and then Castellanos 2. Alec Bohm had 1 this past season, and Realmuto with his 3. There's no holes in this batting lineup, and there's really no hole anywhere. So you could get into a point where you're cruising through an order, and you maybe have gotten the first 6 guys down. Well, then you still have to go up against Bryson Stott, JT Realmuto, and Brandon Marsh, who still aren't easy guys to get out. All guys, Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh, that I think will actually take a bigger step forward next season as well. But again, I would just think this is the most relentless lineup in the entire maybe history of Major League Baseball. This lineup just has zero gaps in it. And if they have the money to do it, they should really go out and do it, because that would be really cool to see in the NL East, to see Juan Soto back in that division going up against the Nationals again. That would be a really cool narrative, even though obviously I want to see him back in the Bronx in pinstripes on the Yankees. But when you think about the Juan Soto sweepstakes, I mean, the Phillies are just they're in win now mode. Like they've never had a championship window that's been open this wide. And if they do have the urge to go out and sign and push to the World Series, this is what could do it. I mean, you saw the Dodgers went out and got Ohtani, got Yamamoto, it pushed them to the World Series. This is what teams are going to do, and I feel like the Phillies are going to realize that, and they're going to be like, well, we need maybe one player, and they really are like one really solid player away. We saw how their bats kind of took a drop towards the end of the season, and it kind of interested me because I think Soto would benefit them not only just by straight up being on the team, but take a look at the baseball savant chase rate from the Philly hitters. Like obviously right here, where hopefully you guys can see my cursor kind of highlighting this chase rate number here, where only Kyle Schwarber and Brendan Marsh have above average chase rates, and they're not even like that good. Like they're solid, but they're not amazing. Kyle Schwarber definitely a better chase rate, which I thought he had a horrible chase rate, but I guess that's not the case at all. You move down the line here, and you got a couple guys at average with Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott, but then it just takes a dip off of a table here, and then you got Nick Castellanos having a really bad chase rate. Same with Johan Rojas, Trey Turner, even Bryce Harper, even. I mean, these are not hitters you would expect necessarily to have a terrible chase rate and go swinging at balls outside of the strike zone all the time. But that's what you get with this Phillies team, and now you add Juan Soto into that just for the fun of it. Let's see what his chase rate was in 2024. Yeah, he was among one of the best. You see 98th percentile there, an 18.3% chase rate. That would help the Phillies out immensely. And I think that, while this is obviously a very a what if rumor that, we don't really know if this stuff will really happen or not, it would be one of the cooler ones for sure, because I mean, there are only two qualified hitters that were on the Phillies roster in 2024 that had solid chase rates. So it's obviously a need that they need to fix. The Dodgers were really good at plate discipline, and that was part of why, the Yankees just crumbled against them. This would really help. This would help unbelievably with that, and just to have a guy who's got generational plate discipline. I mean, how does that not help? I mean, I don't know, but that was pretty much all I saw within the Juan Soto kind of lore for this for the rumors that have been updated. Not much going on with that. He did actually say, or I believe Scott Boras said that he's going to take his time to figure out where he will sign. It's not surprising, being a Boras guy. They typically sign pretty late, as far as I've seen recently, with guys like Snell. Jordan Montgomery, I believe, was a Boras guy until he signed very late last year, and I think he dropped him. But if somebody wants to correct me, they can if I'm wrong there. But I believe that's what happened with that. I feel like the longer he holds out is probably just the more money he'll get. He'll just draw up a bidding war. This is not like something that I think like Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, where teams are going to start not really paying. This is Juan Soto. Like, you will pay for Juan Soto if you want Juan Soto. But now we're getting into the Boras, skewing rumors part, which, I mean, yeah, I don't really want to believe a lot about what's going on with this. I already saw a lot of Yankee fans saying they're not going to even look at reports until they see the one where he actually signed, which I think is obviously the way to go. We're not going to really listen to the Boras propaganda and Boras fear mongering. We're going to listen to just the Jeff Passan tweet that says where he signs, and that's pretty much it. But I just thought that was a cool little rumor, little thing to talk about. Maybe we'll start looking at these potential landing spots for Soto a little bit deeper as we get closer to figuring out where he'll sign. But we're not really getting far right now, so really just speculation at this point. But it's fun speculation that we get to do. So there's that. But now we get to move down to our third little segment of the show, which is a couple position shifts. And that's not really something I thought I would have to really talk about in depth too much on the show. But they're actually two pretty big names. We got Mookie Betts and Wilson Contreras that are going to be shifting positions in 2025. Mookie not really shifting positions. I guess both of you guys aren't really shifting because they played there before, but they're moving there for, I think, longer term. At least we know Wilson Contreras is making a permanent switch to first base. But let's start with Mookie Betts because he's obviously the bigger name here. But I want to take a look back at the Dodgers depth chart and the Dodgers projected opening day roster because now Mookie Betts is actually projected at shortstop and Tommy Edman is projected at center field, which is what I believe I said like word for word I wanted to see. But as you guys can see on the screen here, Mookie Betts sitting at second in the batting order, now playing shortstop. Let's take a look at that outfield now. Let's take a look at it because Andy Pages, I don't mind rolling him out there at all. I think a near 24-year-old should be given a chance to improve and should be given a chance to develop. They gave James Outman that chance, and that's where he is at right field. I don't think he'll be there for this season. I think they've given up on him, and it sucks because he's only 27. I think Outman could find it somewhere else if he just really digs deep and grinds, but doesn't seem like LA is really that place for him now. I think that they're going to want to make a bigger splash and get somebody. So this made me think, are they really in on Juan Soto? And I don't seriously see that being a possibility with all the money they have allocated already. I just don't think they're going to do it. I really think they're going to go out there and sign another corner outfielder. I don't think it's going to be Soto, but I think it's going to be one of these guys. I think I got three guys that I think take over James Outman's place there in right field. One of them is a very, very easy to kind of wrap your head around player. And it's, I don't know what happened there with the screen share, but let me try to get that back going because I kind of killed the momentum there. It's Teoscar Hernandez. It's just the easiest option that that I think we have in not only just this pool of free agents, but just among all of these corner outfielders. I think this just makes the most sense. 2024, he had a 4.3 WAR, 160 hits, 33 home runs. He won the home run derby. 99 RBIs, 339 on base, it's 272 batting average. I know I'm just reading off the boring stats here. If you want to actually take a look at how he was on the Dodgers compared to the rest of his career, we could start just plugging in all these numbers. And if you want to plug in OPS plus, which is kind of a lot of the advanced stat heads love using OPS plus with the league average number at 100, you can kind of see how much better comparatively everybody has been to each other. And I think that's a really good stat to look at here. So OPS plus, keep in mind a 100 is a league average score here. When you cut out this 2020 COVID season where they only played 50 games, at least Teoscar only played 50 games, he hasn't had a better season OPS plus wise than 2024. He really just excelled here, slugged at a 501 clip. He obviously has done better, but this OPS was near where it's been, 7 years ago. And he really just has stayed, honestly, playing at a very consistent rate. And I think the Dodgers really like what he brings production-wise to this table. I think they're going to want to bring him back, whether, I don't know if they're going to want to go for a big splash in Soto or Santander, if they're going to go Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, I think Teoscar would take a little bit less money to play for the Dodgers too. So I see him personally re-signing with the Dodgers. I mean, you could see OPS plus again. He's just at his best when he's with the Dodgers. But he's a really solid player. I would love to see Teoscar back on the Dodgers and not back in the AL East. I think that would be good for all of us. But next guy I had I kind of alluded to it earlier, was Anthony Santander of the Baltimore Orioles, or formerly of the Baltimore Orioles. I think they're going to try to do everything they can to sign him back because he impacts their offense in ways that I don't even think many people realize. The third most home runs in the league. You can't tell me the Dodgers won't, want this guy at least a little bit. This is a switch hitter, one of the best power hitters in the league, has above average arm strength out of right field. It fills every gap they need. Decent arm in the field. Phenomenal power hitting bat. I mean, I think it checks off every box. And I think while it's more expensive than Teoscar is probably going to be, it's worth at least trying if you have the money to go do it. If you're going to make a big splash, I think this is where they do it. And if you want to look at how good he's been, OPS plus wise, again, this is a guy. If you erase that short, ridiculous 2020 season, he was at his best in 2024. In terms of actual OPS, we can even see again, you erase that 2020 year, 2024, he was at his best. Slug, he was at his best in 2024 if you take that 2020 season away. On base percentage, not quite. Batting average, not quite. Strikeouts, I mean, he's right there. But in walks, he has had more walks this year than any other season. So Anthony Santander, he's a guy that I think is going to command a big contract this offseason. I don't think that's really very debatable. He's going to probably have a shot at going to the Dodgers after seeing that they're going to move Mookie. I think he has a very good shot. But one other guy that I think is a cheaper signing that they maybe will make a play for, because I mean, they could go other directions with the rotation and the bullpen or the field, but I think Tyler O'Neill could be in play here. And this is a guy who really, I mean, you could see 132 OPS plus in 2024. He was well above league average. He had 31 home runs and a 241 batting average. This just kind of screams to me a guy that if he can stay healthy, the Dodgers will get everything out of him. I think he would really enjoy playing with Freddie Freeman, obviously, Canadian native. I think these two would get along very nicely. And at 29 years old, I just feel like it makes sense. I feel like let me just look at the ages of everybody else on the team, but he fits right in that same window. I mean, like literally everybody's around 27 to early 30s. I feel like that just kind of makes sense, and not only timeline, but statistically, production wise, I just think it makes sense. If I'm head of baseball hops for the Dodgers, I may be taking a closer look at Tyler O'Neill than a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, because if he could stay healthy, I mean, he's arguably just as productive. And I think the Dodgers just do such a good job of getting the most out of, really everybody, that this is a pretty solid option for them if they want to go out there and just sign a corner outfielder who has a little bit of pop. But I think that they're clearly going to try and sign a corner outfielder who has a little bit of pop. Staying on topic of the shortstops, I just wanted to kind of throw in there, Ha-Sung Kim's getting a lot of buzz around just free agency in general, probably because he's going to be a little bit cheaper than the other shortstops like Willy Adames or I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody else, but I can't. But Ha-Sung Kim could be a San Francisco Giant. Now, they might move Tyler Fitzgerald to second base. It's reports that I've been seeing. This would be interesting to see then if the Dodgers are not going to go after Willy Adames anymore, if they're moving Mookie to short. We'll see what they do. But Ha-Sung Kim, a name to keep up with through free agency. I think he's going to be a name to watch, and San Francisco a team to watch with him, because I think they'd love to pair Kim and Jung-Ho Lee together, both Korean. I think that would make a really cool Korean market there in San Francisco, and a market that already caters to obviously the Asian baseball fan and the Asian Pacific baseball community as a whole. Obviously loves the Dodgers, the Mariners, the Giants, the Padres. These West Coast teams mean a lot to them. So I think Kim going to a place like the Giants, where he could have maybe a bigger role than he does on the Padres, would be a really cool idea. But moving on to our only other position change, which was Wilson Contreras. This is a guy who's going to be making a change to first base. Now, I'm going to pull up his Baseball Savant page so we could kind of see how he was in the more advanced metrics realm. Fielding wise, you could see he just wasn't really special. So I think this really doesn't, seem like an idiotic move to me. Age 32, it's only going to get harder for him to catch, and his bat's too good for him to really have this wear and tear of catching every single day. And looking at their catching room, I mean, there's a lot of young guys to really like within the catching department of the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll talk about them in a few minutes here. But he's a far better hitter than he is a catcher. So, I mean, taking away, just energy from him, from having that wear and tear of squatting behind the plate for a majority of time, especially getting into the mid-30s of your career, it's just not going to make you a better hitter. He's in the 96th percentile for xWOBA and has a 12.6% walk rate, which, we don't talk about xWOBA on this show at all, because nobody really talks about it, but a lot of advanced stat heads like it. It's obviously at the top of that Baseball Savant percentile rankings there. So it means a lot to some people. You can see he's good at something as a hitter, like really good. So he's obviously got something going for him. But his blocking and caught stealing rates were just slightly above average, while his framing and pop time were well below average. So it doesn't make sense to keep him really there behind the plate when you have solid guys behind the plate, in my opinion. I would just love to see those hard hit rate numbers go back to what they were in like 2021 or 2022, which we'll take a look at. They were pretty solid in 2021. I mean, as you can see here, average exit velo and hard hit rate are pretty high. But moving into 22, you can see the hard hit rate goes up, xWOBA goes up. So I think those numbers kind of return that to like that realm. I would more expect this type of production next season if Contreras is not catching. Which I mean, even that last season, like in 2023, he was really solid behind the plate. But I expect him to kind of just see all of this production go up, and hopefully we see his defense, stay solid enough at least. But we've got about 5 minutes left here, so I just want to touch on a couple of brief signings. A couple of brief signings that we had in other news. We've got Kyle Hendricks. He signed a 1-year, $2.5 million deal with the Los Angeles Angels. Hendricks in 2024, 29 appearances, 24 games started, 132.2 innings pitched. He had just south of a 6 ERA at 5.92, and he ranked in the 97th percentile on Baseball Savant for average exit velocity. So not a lot of hard hit contact coming off the bat when you're going up against Kyle Hendricks. It seems to be something that the LA Angels really tend to like about their pitchers. And then in the 87th percentile for hard hit rate as well. So above average there, well above average there. Just a guy who's going to limit hard hit contact. I think that's actually really valuable for teams. And there were times in 2024 where Kyle Hendricks was really solid. He had a 3.60 ERA in June and then ended the year in September and October with a 2.89 ERA. And in both of those months, he did hold opponents to a 220 batting average. So at age 34, it's not totally lost for Kyle Hendricks. He just hopes to have a little bit more success with the Angels, hopefully a little bit less pressure, and he can excel there. And I'm sure the Angels are maybe hoping they could flip him into a trade piece for a team that's looking for a contender that's looking for a solid pitcher. If Kyle Hendricks can turn into that. But the last signing that I wanted to touch on was Austin Hedges, who signed with the Guardians for a 1-year deal. I'm not sure if I've actually seen like a number, but I just know that's going to be huge for the clubhouse leadership of the Guardians for next year. While they probably would have wanted to allocate money a little bit elsewhere, I don't think you could really put a price on having a leader like Austin Hedges in the clubhouse. And I think pairing him and Stephen Vogt together is going to be incredible. So it's already been incredible. It's already worked. So I think this Austin Hedges signing was just kind of a no-brainer. Everybody kind of expected it to happen, but I really like what they did there. And I think that this will be a very good piece of leadership for a lot of the younger guys like Bo Naylor, who could really use it. And, some other pieces on the team as well. Guys who are looking to break the big league club, like Travis Bazzana as well. If he breaks the big league club, having that type of leadership's huge. Just massive for them. But totally off topic, but need to know how you think Dusty May will do at Michigan. I haven't been asked this. I don't think anybody's actually asked me this one before. So let's just take a look at Michigan basketball real quick because, this is a baseball show, but, I'm out of stuff to talk about at this point now, and we got a couple minutes, so I'm going to actually touch on this question a little bit. I think he'll do solid. I think he's got a really solid roster with him right now. They took a huge win over Cleveland State by like almost 50 points. And I think Vlad Golden's just the typical Big Ten center, the Luka Garza type of player. Like he doesn't necessarily remind me of that the way that he plays, but he reminds me of just this really just solid Big Ten center that's tough to just defend and keep from scoring. But he didn't do good in the first game. 2 points for him. I really, really like what Dusty May was able to get out of Danny Wolf. 19 points for him. This team's deep. Like this team is very deep. They had 3 scorers off the bench that had double-digit points, and I think that's huge for them. Just looking at the game that they played. It's Cleveland State, so I'm not really gonna I'm not really going to get too excited about it, but I mean, this team has a really solid coach. They obviously have depth. If Vlad Golden's dominant, I think they're going to be a very hard team in the Big Ten to take out, and I think it's an extremely deep Big Ten for basketball this year. So it'll be fun to watch. But if that's something people want me to talk about more, I can try and shift gears to more college basketball content. Uh, I love college basketball as well. And then when baseball starts to halt a little bit, it's going to be hard to just come up with stuff. So maybe that's the direction uh, we take to after baseball kind of slows down. But I'm going to make sure that I give Robbie a bit of time here to start his show up. And so stay tuned for Robbie's show about the AAC coming up here in just a minute. But thank you to everybody watching the live stream. If you watch the replay, I appreciate it. I'm going to be live again Tuesday. I'm going to be out of town this weekend. So Tuesday is when we will go live next week, and we'll be live Thursday as well. But that's all I got for you guys today on Back to the Dugout. Stay tuned to everything on the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network for the rest of the day, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.